Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you're listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable podcast. My name is Eric Nielsen, and I do not have a co-host today. Corey Romero is off for the Thanksgiving break, as so is Bob Blankers. But today is Wednesday, November 26, 2025, and I am here with Stephen DeBarros. We're going to be talking about virtual private cloud, but before we get to Stephen and talk about what we got going on there, let's do a little bit of the news, a little bit of what's happening in the United States around Thanksgiving week, some barbecue turkey talk, and then we'll get into VPC and everything that's happening in VPC in 9, because again, 9 changes the game a little bit because we've bundled everything together. So now you have self-provisioning. It automatically gives you there because you have NSX built into the package. So we'll get to that, but let's talk a little bit about the news first. First off, the vMug Advantage home lab environment where you take your VCP, get certified. We now have that up and running. It went into provisioning this Monday. And so if you are looking for your VCF 9 tokens, technically, you can go get them. You can go log into the VCP portal, and as long as you've got a license in there already provisioned, you were able to get your VCF 5.x keys. Now up at the top right-hand corner is a Generate Tokens button, and if you click on that Generate Token, it pops up a screen, gives you a Generate button again. You hit it and asks you a question or two, and then generates your tokens, and you should be able to get your VCF 9 tokens. You cannot get downloads. Download buttons have been turned off until December 8th. So December 8th, downloads are frozen because the download project is in a new release, and they would not let us go live with the download button until December 8th. So you got a few more days to wait on the download. But if you've already got VCF 9 installed and you're running on that 90-day expiration, the free license, you can go get your tokens now. And let me know, eric.nielsen@broadcom.com, if you have any kind of problems. I'll try to debug it. We are in kind of burn-in mode right now between now and December 8th. So if you do find something wrong with your licenses, let me know. We've had a couple community members already testing, and they have gotten their license panels with the Generate Token button up on the right-hand corner now. And so things are marching along there. So we're excited about that. It is in production now, and you can go try to get your tokens. So be aware of that. Otherwise, in the news, it is the holiday week in the United States, so a lot of people are out. Bob Plankers is out, Corey Romero is out, and I'm in sunny Miami Beach. Nice ocean waves in my background here. Actually, you can't see them, but they're out there. And I hope everybody gets some downtime, especially in the United States, get some family time, be thankful for another good year, and looking forward to 2026 as we come into the new year. So the holiday season is upon us, and I couldn't be happier. So with that, I don't think there's any other news. Go play with the Advantage portal if you're so inclined. Should see downloads popping up next week, December 8th, and we'll go from there. Let me know if you have issues. All right, with that, let's talk to Stephen DeBarros. He's an ex-VMware employee. He's a YouTube streamer. You can go follow his YouTube channels. Like 10,000 followers on his YouTube channels. And so, Stephen, we always talk to our guests because we are a community podcast. Tell us a little bit about your career arc. How have you got where you are today? And then more specifically, how did you get into doing YouTube videos? And I know that the video you had on the VMware private cloud actually trended, so that's why we picked you up and wanted to bring you on the podcast. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks very much, Eric. It's a pleasure being here, to be honest with you. I was kind of surprised when I got the call, and I love being here. So my career, basically, I'm Canadian, so I'm located just north of Toronto in a little town, and I actually worked at IBM Canada for 20 years. There, I actually worked on the server and storage brand team, and I actually did pre and post sales customer support. I also did education as well, right? So I would train the business partners, customers, IBM service reps, all that on the server technologies and storage. IBM then became a VMware authorized training center back in, I think it was around 2007, 2006 timeframe. And I was already kind of teaching some VMware stuff in some of our enterprise server classes. So I became a certified instructor. So for IBM Canada, I was actually their lead instructor for IBM in North America. So I taught a lot of the VMware stuff. And I've been playing with the stuff since like ESX 1.1. That's how far back, right? Anyways, IBM kind of got out of the education business, and right around the time when VMware Education was looking for, this is with NSX was starting to come out, so they were looking for level 2 instructors, which I was, that had a bit of a networking background, and I had my Cisco cert. I taught some stuff on IBM switches, so I started working at VMware as an instructor, teaching NSX classes and vSAN and vSphere and all that wonderful stuff. So I worked there. I worked at VMware for about, I think it was about 6 years. And I decided I'm going to kind of slow things down and go independent, right? So kind of this is where I am now. And I've been still teaching for Broadcom, right? And various partners, teaching a lot of the VCF 9 classes and NSX. I actually have one coming up in another week. So that's kind of where I am. And how did I get into YouTube? We kind of had a little bit of a lull there in education for about a year. And I thought, this is a good opportunity for me to get into doing YouTube and keeping my skills up to date, right? And I figured, I'd like to give it a shot. Let's try it out. And it actually turned out to be quite good, to be honest with you, right? Like I said, it keeps my skills honed, and it also provides with the community, a service for the community as well. And right now, I actually just about 2 weeks ago, I hit that 10,000 mark, which I really appreciate my subscribers out there. Thanks very much. All right. So that's me in a quick nutshell.
Yeah. Go. If you're listening to this, you're probably listening to it on your phone as an MP3, but go to YouTube and search for Stephen DeBarros, STEPHEN DeBarros, DEBARROS, and give him a follow. Help us channel like we like. Yep, that cover our tech, and I know you cover a lot of other tech as well. I mean, you worked at IBM, you worked at other stuff. You cover VMware topics, but you also cover other IT topics. So kind of a cool place to come listen to more than just what we've got, right? So that's nice. So little bit of intro to the virtual private cloud, right? So, it's kind of like a isolated self-service cloud environment, but why don't you take us through a little bit of what that is? And I know that we've kind of had that before VCF 9, but, for a lot of people in our ecosystem just use, vSphere, right? And never use NSX, never use vSAN. So maybe you could just give us an introduction to the concept of a private cloud and how does that manifest itself in 9?
Sure. Okay. So you kind of hit on a couple of key points there. It's a secure, isolated environment, right? And NSX has been around for quite some time. And one of the things, and it provided multi-tenancy capabilities as well. But one of the things it kind of lacked was that self-provisioning capabilities. You had to know NSX. So NSX, again, introduced, and I can't remember what version, it was version 4. Something, introduced a concept called projects. Hey, great. So projects could be related back to a tenant. So I could create projects for certain tenants or, customers or whatever the case may be. And I can assign them, a resource, let's say one of my gateways to get out to the outside world, then they could go into their project and administer it. They can create these things called gateways. They can create these things called NSX segments, attach them, play with them, do all these wonderful stuff. But the problem was they had to know NSX. So right. They would log into their project. They had to have NSX experience. So then along came VPCs, virtual private clouds inside NSX. And that gave us the capabilities to make a project for a customer, let's say, or a department. Then they could spin up a VPC. And a VPC really was what we called a tier 1 gateway. It was basically a router. Then you could plug in NSX segments to that. So now a project administrator could say, all right, I'm going to create this VPC and I'm going to make this person the administrator or the user of that VPC. Then they would log into NSX and they could create their segments or subnets and attach them. There was different.
Your own virtual router, right? For your
yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's their own little router. They can plug in little segments into it, hook up VMs to it, and stuff like that. But you still had to log into NSX. Now, the skill set to manage the VPC wasn't as deep as somebody in a project. So they could go in, and it was very simplified. It was very good. And I've got some videos on that. Then we fast forward now to VCF 9. And the big thing that I noticed in VCF 9 was a couple of things. First was the self-provisioning capabilities. So now my vSphere administrator can actually go in and create VPCs. They don't even have to know how to spell NSX, right? Doesn't matter, right? It'll automatically create these VPCs in what we call the default project. So now the vSphere administrator can create these VPCs, create subnets. We don't call them segments, but technically they're NSX segments underneath the covers. And there's different flavors of segments that they can configure. Then they can attach VMs to it. So this is all very simple for a vSphere administrator to do. They don't have to.
It's like hidden microsegmentation without you needing to really understand it.
Yeah, basically, you can look at it like that. Yeah, right. So now they make these really enhanced port groups. vSphere administrators know what port groups are, knows what distributed switches are. They know that. They've been eating that stuff for breakfast for decades now. So these subnets are just essentially port groups, and then they could attach VMs to them. And like I said, there's different types of subnets that they can create. They can create public and private and all that kind of wonderful stuff. All right. Depending on the type of workloads they want to connect. The other thing, okay, great. We got this VPC and we've had it for a while in NSX version 4, and you would connect it to what we call a tier 0 gateway. That required what we call edge nodes. All right. So your NSX person would have to set all that stuff up. Now in VCF 9, we have 2 different ways of connecting our VPCs to the outside world. We have these things called transit gateways. Okay. And that was recently introduced. And one of the ones which kind of blew my mind the first time I heard about it, I was like, what? Nah, that can't be true, but it is, was this distributed transit gateway, which is edgeless. I was like, what? Hang on a second. We're getting to the outside world without going to an edge? No, that doesn't make sense. That can't be right. Something's got to be wrong there. No, but it's true. Okay.
Some of this, when I was doing the training for VCF, some of this stuff hurt my head, right? Like, 'cause I'm a network guy, so I'm like, I understand a router, I understand segmentation, but it did get interesting.
Yes, and you know what? When I teach my NSX classes or even my VCF classes, right? I always do it like in my VCF. There's a VCF build, manage, and secure class. It's a 5-day class, right? Highly recommend that you take that. In that class, I always throw in. I throw in what's called NSX 101, right? So we talk a bit about NSX, and then I basically say, okay, guys and gals, fasten your seatbelts because your minds are about to be blown here. And this is going to get a little, especially if you're new to it, it can be a little hard to digest at first, right? Especially when you start talking about distributed routers and gateways and all this, it can get a little challenging. But I always tell just let's break it down and try to make it simple, right? And that's how I look at things, right? So, but we do talk about it. And like I said, I always tell my folks, if you really want to get in understanding a lot of this stuff, really into the weeds, I would usually say take an NSX class, right?
Right.
Because we cover it quite in depth there, but we don't machine gun it out in 2 hours, right?
I get to the point where I go, okay, it works. I got it. The config is really doing what it thinks it's supposed to do. Then I go, okay, is it secure, right? Like that's my next thing. It's like, how secure is any of this, right? So yeah.
And one of the things, again, because vDefend is an add-on for VCF, right? So when you have vDefend license, and by the way, you mentioned the license of the tokens and stuff. As soon as I get off this, I'm going in, I'm checking mine out right away, right? That's the first thing I'm going to be doing. One of the challenges I have right now is I have the keys for vDefend, all that wonderful, really cool stuff. But since we're running under 90-day eval in VCF, those keys won't work, right? So they work with version 4, but not. So anyways, I'm hoping to get that, and then boom, life will be good. I'll be doing videos on that one like crazy. So anyways, I went off the rails there a little bit. So back to the security. So vDefend obviously is pivotal security when we come to VPCs, and by default, your VPCs aren't allowed to talk to other VPCs and stuff unless you allow it, right?
Right.
Okay.
How many, like, is there a limit on VPCs? Because you have like 256 of them or some larger
That's
number?
actually, you know what? That's an excellent question. It's probably going to be a big number. I'm going to relate it back. I haven't looked. I'd have to look at the config max for this. So I'm going to guess right now. I know we had tier 1 gateways. I think we had a limit of 1,000 or something like that.
Okay,
So
right.
it's probably going to be in that. It's probably going to be a pretty big number, right? But I
Yeah,
have to
that
look
was
at the
that was
config max.
technically a softball question for you because I know
Yeah.
it's a large number because I heard it. Somebody else told it to me. I forget the number, but it is a large number. They
It's
were
a
like,
large number. Okay, yeah. Like I said, I'd have to look it up. But again, a VPC gateway is really a tier 1 gateway, and I know that we have a pretty large number. I haven't checked the latest config max on version 9, but it's probably 1,000 if I have to guess at it. Right. But always check config max, folks.
I'm letting Grok kind of figure it out here. We'll see what Grok says about it when it grinds through it. Technically, let's see, 1,000 plus projects and
Oh, there you go. Wow, that's a lot.
500 VPCs total. So
How many? Sorry, how
no,
many?
don't quote. It says 500. So I'm still grinding through it. Like it's complicated. But yeah, I would say 100 to 500 is what they are.
Okay.
It's if you've ever used Grok or any of these AIs, very long answer. You need like 10 minutes to just kind of grind your way through their answer. As usual, nothing is straightforward, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, so large number. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. And like I said, one of the other big things was these transit gateways. This is how my VPC gets out to the outside world, right? And these transit gateways, as I mentioned, that distributed one's like kind of mind blowing when I first heard that. And then we also have the edge version, right? It's called a centralized. So we have a distributed transit gateway that you can have your VPCs connected to, or you can have what's called a centralized, which has an edge node. Okay. There are some subtle differences. Obviously, one of them is uses an edge. And the other thing, which I was kind of, I don't say shocked, but I was actually like quite amazed. And I thought it was kind of cool. Even your vSphere administrator now can say, okay, I want to deploy a centralized transit gateway, and I'm going to deploy the edge cluster, the NSX edge cluster, which I thought, whoa, that's normally just done inside NSX. So they can do that probably with some guidance, right? And I've got some videos on that, but you give them a sheet of stuff here. These are the parameters, and they can go through and deploy that cluster. So you get all part of that self-provisioning piece of VCF9, right? Which is kind of cool when you think about it.
So how long have you been playing with VCF9? Like 90 days? You live it on a 90-day license by the sound of it. So
89 and a half right now. So basically as soon as it came out, I had access to it with my VMUG Advantage, and because I was certified, right? So massive, like without that stuff, forget I wouldn't be here now, right? So I've been playing with it since then, just kind of messing around and stuff. I got my own home lab. I'm actually going to be doing a video on that one as well, because I've been getting requests on videos and stuff for my home lab. So I've been playing with it. Half the times, like for example, when I'm teaching, I have my own home lab. I usually wipe that out and then I prepare that for the class I'm going to be teaching. So if I'm teaching VCF 9, I get it prepared for that. If I'm teaching in a week from now, I'm teaching NSX. It's a version 4 class, but still it's NSX. I usually just get that kind of up and running, right? So I'm usually kind of always recycling my lab environment. So redeploying. So I'm kind of used to it, to be honest with you. But I can't wait to get the license. I really want that.
Yeah, right.
Especially the token. Oh, the token, I'll die for that.
So obviously you're impressed with this. Are there other things with 9 that struck you as interesting?
Yeah, actually. Okay, so when I'm teaching VMware classes, I've taught like the vSphere stuff, no problems, vSAN, NSX, obviously, Site Recovery Manager, all that stuff I taught. I haven't really been down the road of the ARIA products, right? I'm familiar with them, but I wouldn't say I was an expert to teach them and stuff like that. So when I looked at VCF 5 and I seen, okay, you got Lifecycle Manager in there, and how do I deploy this other stuff? I found that challenging, right? When I got into version 9, I was like, this is a piece of cake. Operations is deployed, automation, which I didn't even know how to spell, right? Bam, gets deployed for me. Then you got logs, right? VCF operations for logs, piece of cake to set up. Network, piece of cake to set up. all that stuff was simplified, even the identity broker. And I got videos on all that. So I thought that was a major step forward as well, just making things much easier to deploy, right? And also giving us the choice. Do you want to do a simple deployment, non-clustered to save resources? Or do you want to do a more high availability deployment where these components are deployed as a clustered environment, like NSX managers, or VCF operations and stuff? So we had those choices there, which I thought was really good. Whereas in VCF 5, you didn't have that choice, right? Unless you kind of went into JSON and messed around, but that wouldn't be supported.
Yeah, that was my impression. Was that when I got my 9 up and running, it was like I felt like I went from a community college to a big university, right? Like went from like, this small little environment that I knew, vSphere or vCenter, it was fine, lots of VMs, vMotion, to all of a sudden everything was installed for me and all the consoles were up and running and you could actually start playing with it, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's so many choices to go learn, right? Like because you could sit and learn it because it's right there running for you now.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. And like I say, that part of it I was rather impressed with because it made things so much easier for people that aren't experts in that. Like, how many times have you installed, ARIA for logs, let's say, right? That's what it used to be called, right? So now it's VCF operations for logs. It's so simple, right? Like I said, I've got videos on it and it was pretty easy, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the notes that it's giving us now for an architect, right? What's the best planning, right? Because no one's going to go roll this out in production without a lot of planning. I feel like the architecture certification now is going to be more important now because you are rolling out the whole thing into your enterprise, right? So
yes. Yes, and that's actually one of the things I talk about in the class. I usually tell my students, and again, the students vary from one class to another. I might have students that are very they know vSphere like the back of their hands. They know NSX. They know operations automation. So it's really nothing new to them. Then you have some that know vSphere fairly well, but they're really they don't know NSX at all, and they don't know vSAN. So I say there may be learning curves there that you're going to have to look at, right? Because there's a lot of components there, right? And we had training on all of those before it was VCF, right? So you can imagine, you can imagine like some of the training that they would have to do.
I find vSAN quite manageable, right? Like that was very easy, straightforward to consume, to understand in my mind, map it out, how it behaves, how it behaves with storage, your options of the choices of storage and RAID, how much high availability do you want of your storage? All makes sense. It was when you get into networking and NSX and just covering here, right? Like that you were like, whoa, okay.
That's when everybody kind of tap on the brakes a little bit. It's like, whoa, what's going on here?
Right.
Yeah. So I get I see the same thing in the classrooms. Usually the vSAN stuff, and I even do we do talk a bit about vSAN in there, and I do a vSAN 101. A lot of people sometimes may not know the difference between original storage architecture and express storage architecture. So I kind of run through that so they all have a foundation. And again, we do have separate vSAN classes if they want to learn more in depth, right? Definitely the NSX portion of it seems to be the part where people are challenged today, right? But again, it's being more and more simplified now. Before VCF, to be honest with you, if I walked up to you and said, "Here, deploy a vSphere environment with vSAN," you might say, "No problems, I could do that." Oh, by the way, set up an NSX environment for me at the same time. What are you talking about? Right? So this kind of does it for you, right? So it simplifies it.
So as long as you touched on a point which is training, what are you part of the VMware Broadcom train? Where do you buy training from, you or from other people? Where are you? Where do you work?
I work from my house most of the time. So, no, but anyways, that's a great question. Actually, so I'm an independent independent instructor right now, right? Before I was VMware employee. So typically, if you signed up for a Broadcom course, right, on VCF 9 or something like that, they may call me up and say, "Hey, Steve, can you teach this class?" Whatever. Like, sure, right? So they'll do it. Or I also do some training for some of the partners as well. So they may call me up and say, "Hey, you know what? Like, we've got this class running or whatever." So right now, most of my training time has been going through to Broadcom, right? So actually,
Right, because I didn't want to say anything that puts you out of business or anything, but I was going to say, but now if you're a VCF licensee, right, you have an enterprise license for VCF or any license for VCF, training is now free, right?
Yep.
So the other thing is that VCP certification doesn't require training anymore. So
Yep.
you can take training, you can not take training, and go set your VCP, you can learn. But if you want to get trained, which I highly recommend when you come into the networking piece, if you don't spend, and I feel like training is not so much that I can't learn it from the internet, right? It's just that it forces you to sit down and take the day to do it and study it and do the back of the assignment, assignments, because otherwise I took the training online, right? Because it's free for employees.
Yep.
So I did the VCF NSX section, and I got about halfway through it. And the problem was when they layered and layered and layered, I couldn't remember 2 layers ago well enough. I needed more time to absorb it, right? I mean, it was one of these things where I kind of understood all the concepts, but by the time I learned the next set of vocabulary, it's like learning a foreign language. You time out, you have to stop.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes time.
Yeah, so the on-demand classes, and I have access to those as well, right? So I'll look at those. I have great instructors there. I know a bunch of them, right? And it's always good to hear a different approach to certain technology, right? I may explain a VPC one way, another instructor might explain it a different way, right? And hearing it different ways is usually good. I like looking at the on-demand classes as well. It's a good starting point, or even as a review, right? So
yes.
And before the classes were even free, I would tell the students, you could take this class on demand, but you can't ask any questions in it and stuff like that. When you have a live instructor, you can ask them questions, hear other comments from other students, get into some dialogues where, how people are using things. And I value that in a lot of my classes, right? And I try to engage my students to do that in the class, share your thoughts, make comments, questions. Do you
ever whiteboard diagrams too? Because I felt like,
absolutely. Yeah. Whiteboards. I do a lot of whiteboards, and any of my students take my class know I draw horribly. I really suck at drawing, but I like to do it. Right. So, but anyways, I do whiteboards. I actually I prefer doing a lot of demos as well in my classes.
Right.
I find that very helpful, and the feedback I get from my students is the same thing, because they'll see usually in the material as we progress through the material, and I'll be explaining things. They see the screenshots, right? Sometimes that doesn't tell the full story, right? You have to kind of say, okay, well, if I click here, this happens. If I click there, this happens. This what this means. So they see it in the materials, and I usually demo most of that stuff as well. So they see me going step by step, explaining everything and telling them good things to do and bad things to do. And then they also will see it when they actually do the live labs. So they'll see it 3 times, and the feedback I get from the students in my class is they really appreciate that. They find it helpful, right?
And I would just say, when you sign up for a class, you're blocking off the time. You're blocking off the time, and it's hard to block off 3 days, or I don't know how long your class
5 days.
5 days. It's hard to block off 5 days and stay in that zone. And the only reason I got through my VCF training and managed to pass all the end of chapter is that I did it over Christmas break, last year. And I didn't have anything else going on. I had like 4 days off, and I sat in a chair. But even forcing yourself to sit in a chair is a lonely activity. So if you take a class, you got an instructor, you're learning with other people. It's not quite lonely either, right? It's just, it's nicer to do it that way.
I agree. And I used to do all of that, especially you mentioned like over the holidays, over Christmas holidays. I used to do a lot of my certs then, right? Back in the day. But most of the times now, as I'm prepping for classes, I'm like, okay, I'm going to write the cert. So I did my VCF 9 admin at Explore this year. I said, well, I'm there. The exam's out. Let's do it. Get it over with so I can teach the classes, right? So right now I'm actually looking at the architecture and design, looking at that cert. And I just noticed they dropped a few new certs there. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, they've been dropping new certs. They've been getting them ready, dropping them, and their Broadcom leadership is really big on certs, right? And
Yeah.
that translates to VCF division leadership and a bunch of other people. They're really strong, and which is why they made it free, right? Because they're like, look, this is good for everybody, and Broadcom is big on investing in technology, right? They want to make it. I wouldn't say they want to make it hard. They like hard problems, and making innovative solutions for hard problems. And then they believe that now that we've done this, let's teach people it, right? So it's absolutely true.
Yeah, exactly. And I find certification is very valuable as well, right? Well, I got all kinds, but it's just part of the industry, right? It just shows you that you know the product or you know the technology, right? It's just that way of, yes, hey, I'm certified for this, right? So
yeah, and that's why the CEO said, when Broadcom took over, there were leadership that told me Broadcom would never give away software. That's never happened ever, ever, ever. The only way it's happened if you had, our CEO Huck Tan actually sign off on it and send a memo saying we want to do this, and so we went to him and we said, look, we'd love to do this. Home labs and he said, absolutely. I get it. You have home labs are great, right? He says, and he wrote the memo, and the only thing he says is, but tell you what, get certified, right? So that's where it came from. Like, get certified, get your home lab. Everybody go get trained. This is architecture stuff. We want you to be smart. Go get trained. And you're good to go. So that's where we ended up, and now you're getting your license tokens because of it.
Like I said, I'm gonna go get mine right now. At the end of this, I'm gonna go grab my token.
Well,
but you see, the downloads aren't working right yet.
We're still until December 8th. We're in bacon mode. So if it doesn't work, just send me mail. Does
that mean our licenses are available?
Huh? Yeah.
Does that mean our licenses are available as well?
Yeah, the licensors are in there. If you
great.
Now, here's the thing: have you ever requested, when you got your cert, did you request a VCF license already?
I'll be honest with you, I can't remember because I probably tried a couple of times. But you need a site ID. That I tried the VMUG one. Obviously, that one didn't work, right?
So I did a session for VMUG on this. I talked about this podcast. There were a couple bugs when you go to the portal to log in. You log in with your Advantage email address or your certification email address. When you log in, it takes you back to the generic Broadcom support page. Don't look at anything on that page. It tells you to set up your account and do it. Don't do any of that.
Don't listen to it.
No, go reload the URL that you first went into to go to your Alpine certification portal. When you reload that page, there are your licenses.
I've heard of a couple of colleagues mention that they were having problems getting even access to the software, but I never really had any issues at all. Once I got my certification, they said, okay, here's your thing to download, and everything worked fine for me, right?
All right. Well, so you have gotten it. Okay, so when you go into that portal again, remember, just once you log in, you got to go back to the portal.
I'll definitely So
you should see your license panels there, and if you've had your license panels, up at the top should be a generate token, and away you go. If you never requested your license, or you never got any licenses or any downloads or anything, then you might have timed out because you only had 60 days after your certification date to go request your licenses.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of noise around that we're going to have to blog about and let people know.
Interesting.
You'll see them, and it'll say, when you click on give me my license, it'll say expired.
Okay. Okay.
And that's because you were supposed to have 60 days once you passed your certification to come in and get your license, download your bits.
Okay.
We're going to try to fix some of that. We'll see.
Okay. I did mine like right away. Once I got the emails, like, bam,
so probably got
the software. I was pumped for it. I didn't wait one minute. I just jumped right in and started getting.
I have several people that were like, "Oh, I came in and it's expired." I'm like, yeah, you never went and got them. Well, I was waiting for 9. I'm like, yeah,
Oh,
fair enough. You're waiting for 9, and you waited too long. And we're going to
okay.
try to fix it. We're going to go reset everybody, or something. I don't know what we're going to do yet. I shouldn't say it on this podcast because then people will go, "You said on podcast 749 you were going to fix everybody." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." But yeah, that's certifications, that's training. Good that you're part of the Broadcom training enterprise, right? Whether you're being farmed out or hired, or you run your own stuff, that's great. And I would encourage everybody to go take a class or two because it's a free resource, right? And it gives you a job, right? Because they pay.
There you go.
Yeah, gives
Keeps
you a
me
job.
busy.
Right. So as you're developing, your YouTube channel and doing more articles, I always like to ask people like, so what do you think 2026 is going to bring that makes you excited? Do you have any ideas around projects that you might start to work into next year?
I think for me, what I'm going to actually take a look at once I get my license there for version 9 is I want to do some deeper dives on vDefend. I think that's going to kind of be cool, right? Some of the stuff there, but I also see VPCs becoming very popular as well, and I think that's going to mature even more in like when 9.1 comes out. Again, I'm assuming that's going to be called 9.1, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. And I think a lot more of the self-provisioning side as well, right? One of the things I have to work on, I kind of mentioned this already, is like my VCF automation. So I have to kind of work towards that. That's my Achilles heel when it comes to VCF 9, right? So I got to actually start playing around with that. I may be looking at maybe doing that over the holidays. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I'm kind of sad because I like PowerShell and PowerCLI, writing scripts, and I made a website back at Sun Microsystem days called Big Admin, and we had a section on scripts and got scripts. We made T-shirts that said "got scripts" with scripts code on it. And
Wow.
a big scripter in general. And what I've discovered with the automation stuff is it's just getting so nice now that you don't really need to. You don't need to write scripts as much as you just need to go into automation console and set things up, right? And now you got one button click, and it just goes and does it to a whole bunch of machines.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like sad because you can see the days of scripting now. Microsoft and Windows NT and they've got rid of scripting forever ago. I feel like most people GUIs to run their enterprises long before this, but I'm still kind of a scripter guy at heart, right? When it comes to that. But the automation stuff is impressive. I would say that I use some of it and I'm like, oh, I don't need to script anymore. Got a nice GUI. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the part I gotta kind of play around with it a little bit, right? So.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that should give you stuff to do for 2026, right? Do you still do stuff with IBM or some of the other vendors and work in any of that space?
Nothing really with IBM, because IBM kind of sold off their server division and stuff like that. So,
right.
So I was really heavily involved in the server division at that point, right? And storage as well, right? So I don't really do anything there. But some of the partners, the education partners, Broadcom education partners, I actually work through another instructor, this guy Frank Bouchard. Anyways, call out to you, Frank. Hey.
Yeah.
He's in Kingston, Ontario. So anyways, he works with a lot of the partners and stuff like that. So we work with them as well for education, right?
Good. Yeah, somebody warned me, be careful of those YouTubers. They're not loyal. And I went, well, I looked at Stephen's stuff and it looked pretty VMware centric, but I'll ask
it is.
Yeah.
It is. I was actually going to be, I was looking at doing some other stuff as well. But the VMware stuff actually keeps you really busy, to be honest with you. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to do other stuff down the road, right? I get a lot of the audience on the channel varies. I get some very fresh people, completely like, what's a virtual machine? What's a server?
Really?
So I get that, and I can kind of sense that. I always have people commenting on my tube, on the channels. Sorry, on the videos, I should say. So they place comments, and I reply back to every single comment. So I can kind of tell, I can gauge their experience level just by the questions that they ask and whatnot, right? Eventually, I would imagine, hopefully, if the channel gets really successful, I may not have the time to comment, reply back to every comments, but that would be, whatever. Anyway, we'll see what the future brings, right? So
Right.
there might be other topics I may cover. AI is one area that I'm rather interested in, and I'm trying to see if I can get my. I've got a couple RTX graphics cards, and I want
Right.
to see if I can get it to work on my Dell server, right? Something is totally not supported, but hey, can I work it and see what happens, right? So kind of.
I think some of my 2026 goals are to the mini forms that we've got. Me and William have been working with do have a PCIe slot in them, so you can get a GPU, a half-site GPU, and put it in there with an extra fan. Try to keep it cold. And then you can run vSphere VCF private AI in it, right? Which they have models, and I have yet to spin up a model, so I've never personally run an LLM and said hello and ask it questions.
I did one.
Yeah.
I did one on one of my gaming rigs here, and I didn't have I did it. I forget what it was called. Doesn't really matter. I did it without a GPU, and you just see my CPU spike. And then the reply back was like, duh, 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 duh. And then I said, okay, let's activate the GPU. Then it was really, really quick. And that was the extent of it. I was like, okay, I want to take that to the next level, maybe with VMware and all that.
There's definitely learning in that, just seeing what the response is with CPU versus what response is with GPU. And then, what is the runtime load? They call it the inference load, but it's actually just what they call runtime. In my book, they invented a new term for runtime. They call it inference, right? But really, it's just like how much GPU is required per engagement, right? And then we were trying to figure out, like in Facebook land, because Facebook's made a lot of noise about using custom GPUs with Broadcom and Google, and like how much, like I've heard the number that a typical Facebook user, you can get like 100 users on one server, right? A one-use server will handle Facebook, not AI, but Facebook.
Yeah. Well, okay.
100, right? So that means if you got a billion Facebook users, you need a million servers sitting in lab, and sitting in data centers somewhere. And then we heard, but I'm not sure, that for LLMs it's 1 out of 10, right? Wow. You need, now I'm making this up, so nobody quote me on this. It's just what I heard, third hand. But that's the question, like how many inference users, how many runtime users per GPU, right? Is it 1 to 1, 1 to 10, 1 to 100? Like, and what I heard is, it's more like 1 to 10. So you're going to need like 10 millions or GPUs to support like a Facebook workload, right? Which is just, so anyway, it's fun to play with it because without doing it, you don't actually know the numbers,
I agree. And to me, if we go back to home labs and talking about that, right? I think it's very important as a professional in the industry. This is my personal opinion, by the way. Okay. So that you have a home lab. I look at it like a mechanic. A mechanic has their own set of tools. So you're going to be an apprentice for a mechanic. Well, you're not going to be borrowing the licensed mechanics tools. They're not going to be too pleased with that. You have to buy your own, right? Same thing if you're going to be a carpenter, you got to get your own tools. To me, these are just tools of the trades, right? I've always had like a home lab where I've messed around with stuff, and to me, it just helps you grow in the industry and with the technology. It makes it a lot easier, right? And I can honestly tell somebody that's got their own home lab and plays around versus somebody that doesn't, just by the way they do things, right?
Elon Musk says that, when he's interviewing people, he's like, you can tell the people that have done it versus the people that are trying to say they've done it but have never done it. Like in 10 seconds whether they've ever had their own gear, whether they've ever had access to the stuff, they've actually successfully or unsuccessfully even at least tried, right?
Exactly.
Because their vocabulary is quite a bit different.
Exactly. And the big thing nice about home labs is you kind of mentioned, have you done it? Have you tried it? You can kind of tell, but it also allows you to make mistakes, right? Without you having to generate a resume, right? You don't want that.
Exactly.
So you can make mistakes and you learn from those mistakes. I don't know how many times I've messed up my lab environment by doing something silly, right? Yeah, so that's
You don't
kind of,
have to write up an incident report.
yeah, exactly, right? Or generate a resume. He's like, oh, well, I'll just reinstall, whatever, right? You know what I mean? So I just like, I won't do that again.
William Lamb said he was on, like, when he was doing the mini forums, he's like, I'm on my 28th install of this stuff.
There
right?
you go. Yeah.
Yep. And then you get really good at it when you've done it 28 times, and you've
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm probably the same thing when I first started playing with VCF. I didn't start playing till like about 5.0, 5.1 time frame, right? And I didn't have my Dell server at the time, so I was actually using a workstation. So I understand having a lab, it's an investment. It costs money. It's not free, right? Unless you're lucky. So I was actually using a gaming rig that I had playing with VMware Workstation, and I was doing that. And I found VCF 5 was like, whoa. I had 2 gaming machines doing it, and it was like smoking. It was so overused. I was like, time to get a real server. So that's when I decided to pick up that server that I have, right? But it does make a big difference. And I don't know how many times I've installed VCF 5.1 and 5.2 and have it blow up, and it's like, okay, what did I do wrong, and that sort of thing. So,
all right, and I know we had you booked for the hour, and we're up in 5 minutes to the next hour, and so we usually will first ask, like, how do people find you? What is the official name of your channel? So if they listen to the end, they must be interested in the topic. So
there we go. Hey. Okay, yeah, they can find me on YouTube. My channel is Tech Unglued, all one word. Generally, nowadays, if you actually just do Google searches on how to install VCF 9, I'm going to probably be in the top 3, right? But the channel's Tech Unglued.
Right.
Yep, Tech Unglued, just all one word. So youtube.com/@Tech Unglued. So you can find me there.
All right, perfect. And you're not on Twitter? You don't play
No, I don't have Twitter. No.
I haven't met an instructor yet that answers, yeah, I'm all over Twitter. Though,
just too busy.
That's exactly right. Too busy. And then finally, to wrap the show up, we do live stream on VBarbecue, VBarbecue. So youtube.com/VBarbecue, and you can go take a look at what Stephen looks like, and at the same time, give us a like on Apple or on Spotify. And we ask people, because we are live stream on VBarbecue in Canada. Do you ever get outside and do any barbecue?
We barbecue polar bears and seals up here. That's what we do. No, I'm only kidding. No. Oh yeah. There's actually some really hardcore barbecuers, but I usually do maybe once a week, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. I like to usually throw a T-bone steak on or something like that. Yeah,
it's just a piece of beef.
You got a slab of meat. As long as it doesn't come out burnt, I'm not a chef. Right. As long as it doesn't come out burnt, if I'm on a couple of beers, it's a good day, right? In the summertime, obviously more burgers and dogs and stuff like that. But as you get older, you got to cut down on that stuff.
I'm down here, Miami Beach, and there isn't a lot of what I'd call a great barbecue down here. They do have some Cuban steak that's pretty good, right? That I like, but I tried some ribs, right, at a place here in Miami just 2 days ago. Trying some ribs, and I was eating, and I was explaining to my dinner companion, like, hey, that this isn't really barbecue. And she's, what do you mean it's not barbecue? And I said, well, you can tell it's not barbecue on a grill or smoked or anything, because you open it up and it's white inside, and there's no red, there's no smoked flavor. They just boiled the ribs, you let them boil till they were done, and then put them on a grill, put some barbecue sauce on them, and put them on a plate and said, here. So I think that's an important barbecue lesson, is if your ribs are too white inside, it means they boiled them too long, and they did not smoke them. So so that was the end of it. Sometimes you get some bad barbecue, and I would say South Florida is probably the place where you're going to get bad barbecue. Right?
Wow.
Other than chimichurri sauce on a good flat steak is pretty nice.
Yeah. I've done some ribs on the barbecue as well. They come out really good. As long as they're nice and soft and tender, they fall apart. All right. So
love it. I smoke them. I have a really good apple 3-2-1 smoke recipe that
okay.
turns them red inside. Just amazing, right? They're bad for me because they make me fat. You know, they're too good. They're too good.
Yeah.
They're too good. Yeah. All right. Well, Stephen DeBarros, thanks a lot for coming on the show. Thanks for working on the ecosystem and training people and talking us through VPCs on VCF. And I'm looking forward to playing with it.
Thank you, Eric. It's been a pleasure, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
You too. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.